Welcome everyone today. We are introducing the to empowering change, a series of reflection and learning modules designed specifically for the RES-MAB network. Our goal is to embrace resilience and drive meaningful change in our territories. To understand our framework, we must look at UNESCO, the United Nations Educational and Scientific and Cultural Organization. Their mission is to promote global peace through international cooperation in education, science, and culture. Specifically, they aim to help countries to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, also known as CDH. Also, it manages the Man and Biosphere program, manages sites of ecological and cultural importance. UNESCO plays an important role about the MAP program, and also we need to focus on what is a biosphere reserve. And they are more than just park; they are living laboratories and places of learning for sustainable development. The Man and Biosphere approach represents a shift from traditional conservation. Human role, instead of seeing humans as untouchable or excluded from nature, we take a holistic view where human well-being and ecology go hand in hand together. Also, resource management. We move from protecting static, isolated resources to an interconnected modeling for sustainable use. And the main purpose of the Biosphere Reserve, while in the past we focus on preserving, now we focus on innovating the future of sustainable development. We are part of a massive global community. In 2025 and 2026 periods, the World Network of Biosphere Reserve includes 784 sites across 142 countries. It's more or less 5% of the Earth's surface. What is RES-MAB? RES-MAB is an international project funded by the European Union throughout the PRIMA Foundation. Our mission is to promote adaptation and mitigation solutions based on WFE Nexus, which stands for water, energy, food, and ecosystem, and to bind the landscape resilience against climate change in Mediterranean areas. The project involves diverse partners across the Mediterranean, from Spain and France to Jordan, Slovenia, Italy, Lebanon, and Morocco. This specific training module is designed to strengthen our technical and conceptual capacities. By following the WFE Nexus approach, we assure an integrated and sustainable understanding of our vital resources. What are the main objectives of RES-MAB? There are a lot of general specific objectives and one general objective. And the project involves diverse partners across this Mediterranean, and the promotion of this integrated WFE Nexus scheme for contributing to accelerate the transformation of Mediterranean Biosphere Reserve toward the more resilient and climate change adaptive landscape is our main objective. And just to finish, this training module forms part of the training program developed within the context of the RES-MAB project, in line with the principle of the WFE Nexus. Its content has been designed to strengthen technical and conceptual capacity, promoting an integrated and sustainable understanding of resources, in line with the project's strategic objectives of the WFE Nexus. With these objectives in mind, let's begin our journey toward empowering change for today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Veronica, and welcome back, everyone, to this third session we have today. So today...
Bienvenidos de nuevo a esta primera sesión que tenemos hoy. Así que hoy...
So today we are going to be talking about viability analysis. It's quite an intense session, I would say. There are a lot of concepts that might be a bit tricky to understand. We hope to make it clear for you. And as always, you're welcome to write any doubts you might have on the chat or open your mics as long as we go through it, all the theory. And yeah. These are the objectives and agenda that we have for today. So we have three main objectives: is for you to be able to understand the key concepts around the viability analysis. We will show you some of the tools that you can use in order to conduct viability analysis, and then we will test a real world example. That would be the second part of the session, which we do the activity like we did the last sessions. So yeah, we have divided the agenda in two big blocks. The first block is first the key concepts, and then we will explain to you key feasibility analysis through different tools. One is the profit and loss account, and then the balance sheet and the cash flow. Then we will take a little break, as we usually do, around the middle of the session. And then the second part of the session, we will be doing the activity, which will be to develop a feasibility analysis with you online. We will use an online screen like we did last week and we'll share it with you, and that we will share with you at after the session. So I will now hand on the speaking to my colleague Paul, who will do the first part of the explanation. Thank you, Paul.
Hello, everyone. Good to see you all again. Hope you are engaged in the course, in the discussions we've had so far. We'll try to work on this session today on this feasibility analysis or viability analysis. We'll be using these two names for the same idea. Following the example of the business model that we did last week. Okay, so try to think about it in the same ways and just keep it in mind. For starters, we will go into basically the fundamental concepts of the feasibility analysis, no? But before we go into the spreadsheets or the financial statements, we need to align a little bit in the terminology that we're doing. So we'll start from the basics. No? Okay, what is economic feasibility or economic viability? Basically, it is the condition that evaluates the convenience of the project. Okay, we do this by looking at the relationship between the resources we use, the resources we generate, and what we have available, and we look at it as a simple equation. No, returns generated minus resources used. No, those required to develop the activity in the first place. So feasibility is the study of whether the gap between what you spend to start and what you earn is bridgeable and eventually profitable. Okay, so in essence, we're looking into whether a project is actually convenient or worth the effort. We are not thinking on at this point, we are not thinking at how much money we can make out of this project, but on whether it works as it is defined in our business model. Okay. Beyond the definition, the feasibility analysis is also a methodology. No, it's a tool to help us make decisions under specific conditions to ensure that the project is sustainable. No, so as an entrepreneur or as a worker or as a public officer that supports social innovation and social entrepreneurship, we should be asking some questions that help us understand under which conditions projects work properly or profitably or sustainably, at least. And these questions go along the lines of, at what price should I sell the products or services? How many units do I need to produce? How much can I afford to pay for materials, for instance, or how much can I pay for workers without losing margins, sustainability margins, okay? Or can I afford the interest on external loans, or am I relying too heavily on assumptions of the demand? No, am I relying too heavily on the fact that families will come and pay for these services, or is my assumption somewhat reasonable? So these are the type of questions, type of conditions under which a feasibility analysis is conducted. Okay, and the feasibility analysis, it basically has a place in the development of business ideas. Okay, it's important, to understand when this happens. We started actually with the business idea, the market assessment, the prototyping. We started with discussing how do we identify social needs, how do we identify customer needs, how do we identify customer segments, and how do I put myself in the shoes of a potential customer and understand needs, interests, motivations, the pains and the gains, to then start elaborating a business idea. Okay, we followed with a business model, how we create value and the main characteristics of our operations, and the viability plan or feasibility analysis comes next. This is a stress test. It allows us to see whether the business model that we dreamed or that we defined or that we discussed actually works on paper or on numbers, and under which conditions. If the results are negative, we don't need to break the business model. We go back and adjust the business model. Okay, as we discussed the previous day, the business model is not a paper that it is fixed, a fixed image. It's something that we can adapt. So if our business model as it is defined right now doesn't pass the stress test of the feasibility analysis, maybe we need to make some adjustments, such as, do we need a different customer segment, or do we need a different value proposition that allows us to cover a larger customer base? We need to simplify some activities in order to cut some costs, or do we need to optimize a little bit our providers strategy, let's say, or pool of providers in order to be more efficient in providing our service? Well, that's the type of information that we will get from the feasibility analysis, okay? This sort of stress test. Once our model passes the test, we move forward with the detailed marketing and financing plans that we will discuss in the next session. Okay, so that's a little bit the picture on why we are doing this session at this moment. Okay, and to perform the analysis, the feasibility analysis, we use three primary tools. Think of these as different signs of your business. Okay, what kind of information we're looking at each of them? In the income statement or profit and loss accounts, we see the result of ordinary operations, okay, revenue and expenses, and it shows if the business model as an idea is potentially self-sustaining over time. So we get a clear image of cost structure. We see a little bit the evolution of revenues and profits and losses, and we can see where can we improve some elements of the business model, and we evaluate the self-sustainability of the project. That's one tool. The second tool is the balance sheet. Okay, this is a snapshot. This is a picture that shows the economic muscle of the project, what we own in assets versus what we owe, no, in liabilities. And we can see, you know, the capital that has been invested, the origin, and the proportion in the property of the project. Okay, and finally we have the cash flow statement. Okay, and this is about, and we'll discuss this later in detail, but this is about reality and timing, because it tracks the, let's say, actual movement of cash, of money. We might be profitable on paper in terms of the income statement, but we might go bankrupt because we don't have cash today to pay a debt due tomorrow. Okay, so to get these three tools give us a complete picture of the company's health. Okay, so it will help us understand financing needs. Do we need capital because we need to be able to invest without additional debt, or do we have a sustainability problem and we need to increase our revenues, or do we have a cash flow issue and we just need liquidity in the short term to pay, you know, debts due soon, but the project itself is sort of sustainable. So these are the type of informations that we can collect from different tools. We will try today to focus a little bit more closely, let's say, into the income statement, into the profit and loss, because it's basically the easiest way to start discussing feasibility analysis of your projects. Does it sound about right for now? Does anyone have any specific question at this moment? Do we understand why we're here? I'm assuming everyone is okay and up to date, but again, as Blanca said, feel free to interrupt, to ask questions, whatever. Cool. Then let's try to dig a little bit into the type of concepts and words and terminology that we will see during the session. The first thing that we want to make clear is breaking down the type of costs, basically. Understanding the difference between fixed cost and variable costs, it's key to start discussing the break-even analysis, to start discussing the actual potential for sustainability of your project. Okay, fixed costs are those that do not change if you sell 1 unit or 1,000 units. They stay the same because you have to pay them regardless of your production levels. And variable costs are those that are directly tied to the volume. If we produce more, these costs go up. If we stop these costs drop to almost zero. Okay, so they have a dependency on manufacturing volumes. A change in production implies a change in this type of costs. This is sort of intuitive, but we could think of different examples. Now, what would be fixed costs? Well, would be all the administration costs, all the financing costs. I have to pay the debt to the bank whether I sell an Apple or I don't. It could be general expenses like energy, light for the office. I will have to pay that regardless of I work, if I sell or not. Indirect workforce, if we have someone hired full-time for administration purposes or whatever, I will have to pay that salary regardless of we producing something or not. And others, no, we could think a million of examples of fixed costs. And variable costs. Okay, what would be variable costs? Those that change based on the level of production that I am expecting or that I am willing to produce. No, for instance, raw materials. All these things in the example that we prepared the previous days. If we have some materials that we buy at each session for one therapy session, for instance, we buy some snacks for each session, this cost will be variable, because if we don't do a session, we will not incur in this cost. Or transportation costs of the clients. If we are assuming the cost of moving them from one point to another, well, if there is a session, we'll have to move them, but if there's no session, we'll not need to move to help or to pay the cost of transportation of the clients, etc., etc., etc. Direct workforce. If we have a guide that is an external collaborator that we pay them based on the number of per session, we hire them when we need them for a small tour, let's say, in one specific area. If there is a session, we'll need to pay for this workforce, but if there's no session, we don't need to pay for this guide. So basically, in the real world, fixed costs need to be paid always from day one, whether you are selling or not. If you are sitting in the office or if you are outside working, these costs are running. And we need to, make sure if we are missing something. No, we need to start discussing how do we calculate, how do we estimate the cost, the variable cost, okay? As I was saying, the costs of transportation, for instance, will be faced once we start producing and once we start having to pay, for instance, for the transport of our clients from one place to another. But at this point in which we're doing projections, we're doing feasibility analysis, we need to start making some projections and making some hypotheses on how we consider these costs. Okay, that's a little bit what we will be doing at the end of the session with the example. Okay, trying to create hypotheses on the type of costs that we need to face for our initiatives and start calculating one of the most important concepts in economics and in business, which is the break-even point, the equilibrium. I am assuming most of you have heard of this concept before, but I think it's still interesting to go a little bit in deep into it and understand what's going on and why is it important. Okay, the break-even point is basically the point that helps us understand when do we start losing money. Okay, when do we start being sustainable or profitable? The first horizontal line, fixed costs, this is the cost that we said that they do not change with production, regardless of the level of production. The euros that I spend in fixed costs are always the same, whereas the variable costs, they change with production. Okay, more production, more euros spent in variable costs. Sort of easy at this point. And the total cost is the addition of these two concepts. No, fixed cost plus variable cost make the line of total cost. And revenue, of course, it also increases with production. More production, we have more revenue. We are earning more money. The equilibrium, the break-even point, is the point in which the blue line starts being higher than the green line. Okay, so revenue are larger than total costs. I wanted to show you something which we'll share with you as well at the end of the session, which is this Excel file. Which is a very basic Excel that it might help you test the assumptions of a very simple business model and then trying to find the break-even point of your project. Okay, basically in this very, very, very simple Excel file, you have a potential list of fixed costs, okay, 4,000 euros in contracts, whatever that is, okay, 200 euros in rents, and 100 euros in transports as a fixed cost, or we can call it other fixed costs. Okay, so we have a total of 4,300 euros in fixed costs. Yep. We have 200 euros as price for our service. Let's assume we only have one service, okay? We are producing whatever, workshops with people, and we make 200 euros per workshop. That's the variable revenue. One workshop, 200 euros, two workshops, 400 euros, okay? And we have a list of variable costs, okay? What we need to produce this workshop per workshop. And let's say we need 50 euros in materials that we use for the workshop and 80 euros in transport, because we move this person from one place to another and it costs us a lot of money, whatever, okay? This is the main is all the information we need to calculate the break-even point of our project. Why? Because the break-even point will be calculated only based on this information. What does it mean? It means that, sorry, because, yeah, it's not here. It basically means that the break-even point is calculated as the fixed costs divided by the contribution margin. What's the contribution margin? The contribution margin is the variable revenue, so the price, minus the variable costs, so this thing here. So in this case, 200 minus 80 minus 50 gives us 70. If we calculate this formula, fixed costs divided by the contribution margin, we obtain 61, which is the number of units, the number of workshops we need to do to start being profitable. And that simple equation is very helpful to understand the viability, the feasibility of our project. An example, no? If we decide to produce 0 workshops, we will assume 0 variable costs, we will get 0 revenue, but we will still assume 4,300 euros in costs. Where will be the line of revenue, the line of costs up here in 4,300, and the line of revenue will be here at 0. If we decide to produce 30 units, 30 workshops, well, the line of costs will be a little bit higher because we will face the variable cost, and the line of revenue will be also a little bit higher because we will start making some money from the price, okay? And it is not until the break-even, 61, that our lines cross and we start making money. Okay, so that's the very simple structure to calculate the break-even point of your project. And what is interesting about having an Excel like this, and we'll share it like you, is that you can start testing some of the assumptions in this model. For instance, well, no, but I think I want to make it cheaper because I want to be able to offer the service to people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. Okay, well, if we make it 180, so we make it 20 euros cheaper, the contribution margin is smaller. Our margins are smaller because the difference between 180 and variable costs are lower. So we need to sell a little bit more in order to be profitable. Yeah. Or if we have higher fixed costs, well, then we need to sell even more because we need to face a higher portion of fixed costs. Yeah. Does it make sense as a structure of a very simple test of our business model? Yeah. Cool. So that's one important concept that we will be discussing today. setting aside other things that are not, let's say, considered in this very simple structure. Investments. We often confuse expenses with investments. No, an investment is the acquisition of assets, things the company owns that are necessary to start and carry out the activities. These are not consumed immediately, but they stay with the business for a long time. No, it could be tangible items like machinery or transport vehicles or computers, but it could also be intangible items, okay? Things that you actually need to work, like software or whatever. Example, when you buy a tractor for a farm, for instance, you are not spending money in the sense of expenses in our income statement. You are exchanging your cash for a productive asset, something that will help you keep generating revenue for years to come. So this is considered in a different area, let's say, of our feasibility analysis. So important to distinguish between expenses and investment, and to keep this vocabulary in mind. Amortization or depreciation. This is also something that we need to keep on top of our heads, and we'll see it a little bit in the feasibility analysis, but we'll leave it for later. Since an investment, like a machine, lasts for several years, it wouldn't be, let's say, fair to record the cost as an expense in the first month and say, yeah, we are not feasible. This project is not feasible. So this is where the amortization comes in, okay? It is the process of distributing the cost of an investment over the years of its useful life. So if we buy a delivery van or a tractor for 20,000 years, and we expect to be for 5 years, we don't record a loss of 20,000 euros in year one. We record an annual depreciation expense of 4,000 years. Okay, so this sort of reflects the importance of understanding the differences between the tools that we presented in the beginning. It's not the same, the income statement, the profit and loss, and the balance sheet. One reflects the assets, the other reflects the actual revenues and expenses that we are facing. And as we were saying, these assets, this tractor, this delivery van, they have a useful life of the asset. No, they have a period in which we use them, and that's something that's typically something that is stated in legal documents. No, that the period of use in service for each of the assets of the company. Okay, so that's a little bit the sort of stage we wanted to set in this case. In the case of investments, there is this important distinction to be made, which is between assets and liabilities. Okay, assets are the acquired goods, rights, software, machinery that we obtain, and liabilities are the debts and obligations that we have to assume, that we have to consider in order to be able to acquire these goods and rights. Okay, these two things, as we were saying, are not recorded in our profit and loss. They are recorded in our balance sheet. Okay, and this distinction between assets and liabilities allows us to understand, as we were saying, the economic muscle of our organization, the financing structure, the properties that we have, the accumulation of debts that we have. Yep. And a similar thing happens, or well, not similar thing, but a similar distinction needs to be made between the profit and the cash flow. Okay, this is perhaps the most important slide for survival of business models. Basically, there is a huge difference between accounting, income and expenses, and treasury, cash, earnings and payments. Okay, why? Because income and expenses income is recorded in our profit and loss account, something that we expect to happen, but earnings are only recorded in our cash flow when they indeed happen. Okay, and same applies to expenses and payments. Ones are recorded when they are accrued, the others are recorded when they indeed take place. Why is it important? Well, because as we said in the beginning, our project could be feasible, could make sense on paper, because we expect a certain amount of clients that make our project feasible and a certain amount of costs that we can cover. Yes, that could happen. But the typical problem of, let's say, self-employed people, or most of businesses, is that the earnings will happen at the end of the year, but payments to providers need to happen today. So if we only look at income and expenses, the project is feasible. But if we look at earnings and payments, we have a gap in the, let's say, 6 first months of the year, because we have no earnings until end of year. Okay, so timing is key to actually understand and be able to properly evaluate feasibility of our project. Marie says, I understand well the tools at a company scale, but it looks more complex. It looks more difficult for a more complex business model involving several companies. Either cereal sector involving farmers, millers, bakers. How shall we do the feasibility analysis? Okay, that's an interesting question. To be fair, the typical approach is to, reproduce these tools at the scale of each organization to be able to understand if, let's say, I don't know if it's a cooperative framework that you are working, like a sort of food hub for cereal sector. But usually what we do, and actually we work in several projects in the food industry. And what we usually do is we reproduce these tools at the scale of the company and also at the scale of the cooperative framework, let's say. Okay, so the point in which they share resources or activities, we reproduce the structure of income, expenses, earnings, and payments in order to understand if each project individually is feasible, and if the shared structure is also feasible on its own. Okay, that's usually what we do. I don't know if you've tested that and it didn't work for you, but I'd love to hear the specific problems that you had on this.
Yes, maybe I can talk. It will be faster than writing. But so another difficulty I have is to get the data, because there are private companies and I'm not very comfortable in the idea to ask them, okay, give me all your financial data and I will work with you. When we asked it, farmers, they didn't want to do this work. So I don't know. Well, it's another problem, but theoretically, I understand well exercise, but in the real life, it's not so easy to.
Yeah,
I'm not a company. I'm working on the global project, so it's difficult to ask them. Okay, tell me, give me all your data.
And may I ask? So basically, you want to do the feasibility analysis for a group of companies that are not so interested in this sort of analysis, or it's just to test the feasibility of this shared structure that you want to offer them?
Yes, we have to work on the price, because now the miller is buying the cereals at a very high price, much more higher than the market price. So the farmers are happy, but the miller doesn't earn any money since several years, so it's not viable. It's not viable. And the final price of the bread is quite high, so we have to work this question of the price in each step. So when we asked all of them if they were agreed to work on this together, to share the data and to find a fair price for each step, they said, "Oh no, it will be too long. Okay, let's change the price, but like this, without doing any analysis."
Yeah. Okay. Now I see. That's actually very interesting. And we in Tandem Social we let's say supported and consulted a similar project. Basically, there is a group of farmers in the Pyrenees that had a certain level of production, but there was some margins to improve, or some chance to improve a little bit the margins of the farmers. But any option to optimize these margins could only happen in collaboration, okay? And they thought it would be a good idea to create some sort of food hub that centralizes some operations like commercial activities, distribution tasks, and logistics. Okay, and we start discussing with them, and they were like, yeah, we are interested in a model that helps us with these costs, in order so that if we share this cost, we all can assume a lower amount of cost. But then we got stuck in this thing, that they didn't want to share some specific data. So what we did was to work on it from the other side. We build a model based on certain assumptions. We tell them the price that we think is necessary them to pay to this shared structure in order for this structure to be sustainable. And then they will say if it works for them or not. So it's like, you don't need to give me your data, but then I will design the model without considering your actual cost structure. I will make assumptions and ask you if it works for you or not. It's not ideal, let's say, but it's the only way forward when they need the structure but are not willing to share specific information and data. Yeah, does it make sense?
Yes. So the data, how did you get the data? From studies or studies or
we got partial data from some of the farmers. So we were able to, let's say, make a projection and an assumption of other data. We calculated the parameters of the operational parameters of this food hub, of this central structure. And we told them, okay, for this structure to be functional and be able to assume your logistics, your distribution, and your commercial needs, we need you to pay a certain fee to finance this structure. If it works for you because what you are paying is less than the cost of you having to do these activities on your own, then I don't need you to tell me your data. That's fine, That's the way we found to sort of figure out.
Okay, thank you for this idea. Yes, I think we can work it with the main miller. He is agreed for us to give us access to the data, only him. as he's in the middle of the chain, of the supply chain, we can say, okay, to enable the miller to be paid, to have their revenue, he cannot pay you more than I don't know how many euros per ton. It's okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a little bit the context. Okay, as we were saying, well, income expenses are recorded in the income statement, earnings and payments are recorded in the cash flow statement. So the left-hand side of these concepts, they tell us about the economic viability. Is the business model feasible over a year on paper? And the right side of this structure tells us about the liquidity. Yeah, it seems to work over the year, but will I be able to pay providers in January? Yes or not? Will I be able to pay providers in February? Yes or no? Okay, so timing is important when thinking about income and expenses and earning and payments, and that's the key distinction between the profit and loss account and the cash flow statement. Yeah. Example, sale of a product or service. We deliver the product or service in March, let's say. We conduct these workshops in March, but we get paid in September. Why? Well, because it was contracted or it was hired by a city council, and city councils pay after 3 or 4 months of the service. Okay, so that's the important thing to consider when thinking of revenues. Or I am granted a subsidy, so I can count on this subsidy and I know it in January, but I will only be able to collect it at the end of the year. Okay, so that's the important distinction between income and earnings. Okay, time differences. So a little bit to start closing this first slides on key concepts. We've discussed feasibility, which is our ability to be profitable in the long run. But there is also financing. This is how we get the resources to start. And we've discussed liquidity, which is our ability to pay the bills every day. Okay, these 3 elements are what constitutes the economic and financial plan. And we need all of them to work properly. Okay, if one of them is missing, the project is at risk. You might have a great idea with plenty of funding, but if you manage your liquidity poorly, you won't survive the first year. And you can have, like good financing, but if the feasibility doesn't make sense at all, it won't work out. Okay. So with that said, handing the floor over to Blanca to start going in deep a little bit into some of these tools that we discussed. Again, feel free to ask questions and share specific examples, just like Marie did right now, so we are able to enrich a little bit the discussion.
Thank you, Paul. And yeah, I also want to thank Marie for bringing that up, because I think it does indeed enrich this session. If anybody else wants to share a doubt they have about a specific business they might know of, please feel free to open your mic or to write on the chat. Okay, so as Paul was saying, we're going to enter into a little bit more detail about how to use one of the tools that we use to do feasibility studies, which is the profit and loss account. Yeah. So this is the main structure of an income statement. The income statement is the profit and loss. Yeah. So it's always the same structure, no matter the business, no matter the country, no matter the biosphere reserve, everybody uses the same structure. And what you have here is a structure that reads from the top to the bottom, where we start putting at the top the income statement, yeah? And so we have several things that we need to fill out. First, we have, which is our operating income, yeah? And that's the income that's generated by the business, yeah? By the own company's business. So the activities I'm doing, the products I'm selling, all of the money that's coming in from that business, yeah? So we will put our income at the top there, yeah? And here we have to take into account different things, if we have also different lines of services as well. So anything that has to do with my operating income or from my net turnover or change in inventories, anything that's income related, I'm going to put it at the top, yeah? And that's going to give me a gross number. And then what we do is we put under that the expenses. And the operating expenses are those that are generated by the own activities, yeah? So we need to identify, as Paul was explaining before, what are the fixed costs. If I have supplies, if I have to pay for people that I'm hiring, or if I have an office that I need to pay I can't think of the word right now, sorry. If I have an office, if I have anything that's related to my expenses, I need to put them there. And I also need to take into account the amortization of fixed assets. If I have any assets, yeah, that I own, then I have to also put in this column here the amortization, yearly amortization of that asset, and any other operating expenses that we might have. So then when we do the deduction of all the operation income minus all the operation expenses, what we get there is what is the operating profit. Yeah, so that's the result that I have from the business activity. Yeah. This operating result is also called operating profit. It's also called the EBIT, which is earnings before interest and taxes. Yeah. So these earnings, what I need to do now is I need to deduct, as the own name says, the interest and the taxes. If I have to pay taxes, if I have to pay interest, I will deduct it to the operating profit. And then what I will have there is the line B, which is the financial result. So this is the result that's generated by all the activities minus the income and the expenses. Yeah. And then to that, what I need to do is deduct the taxes. Yeah. So once I do that, then I'll have the result for the year. Yeah. The final result of the year once I've deducted all the taxes. So don't worry, because we will see it later with an example. Yeah. But this is, I wanted to show you first the structure. Yeah. So operational profit and loss. Here we have the cost, the sales revenue, the cost of sales, the product or service expenses, and the personal expanded the direct labor. And what we have here is the gross margin. So to the sales revenue, if we deduct these costs of sales and any other costs that I have as people working for me, I'll have the gross margin, which is going to reflect my company's margin, yeah? Considering only the direct expenses, okay? I'm only talking about direct expenses now. And to this gross margin, what I need to do then is I need to deduct any structure expenses that I might have and the personal expenses. So first I had put only the operating expenses, but now I'm adding also on any other expenses that I have. And here we will have the operating result. Yeah. As I was saying, we also need to take into account the amortizations. Yeah, very important. And any other interest and taxes. And that's going to give us the final result of the year. Okay. So what we need to take, when Paul was mentioning before about different hypotheses and scenarios that need to take into account, what we do when we do an operational profit and losses is we do the projection for the current year, but we can also venture into what's going to happen the following years. Yeah, and what's going to happen in year 1, year 2, year 3, and this is going to already give me the analysis of different scenarios that can come depending on how much I sell, how much I don't sell, how much I produce, etc. And so for this exercise, you need to take into account how many business lines you have. We only have one business line, okay? But if you have more than one business line, you need to take into account all the business lines, and therefore the statement can become a wider, I would say, where you need to take into account more things, but it's important that you take into account all of them. And also you need to take into account, you might have different projects or different areas of activities. Yeah. Yes, Paul.
Sorry. No, I was thinking that links very well with what Marie was asking before about the idea of having it by different projects under one specific activities, or even by funding source. Like when we have a subsidy, the typical thing is that they will ask us for a feasibility analysis of the project that we are asking a subsidy for.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you. True. Yeah. Okay, so this is how the income statement works, basically. And some key ideas that you need to bear in mind that we wanted to pinpoint for you is the hypotheses that you might make, they need to be reasonable, yeah? Don't go crazy on any hypothesis. But if you're doubtful and you don't know how to approach the hypothesis, always be conservative. That's meaning that we always want to put ourselves in the worst possible scenario, yeah? Because if the worst possible scenario turns out feasible, then obviously a better scenario will be even more feasible. So we always recommend to be conservative with the hypothesis you make, yeah? To try to reduce uncertainty as much as you can. Sometimes it's impossible. For example, you cannot predict weather conditions, and therefore, when you have less production of cereals, then there's some things that you can't be certain about. But as much as you can to try to reduce this uncertainty about different things that might happen when thinking about your hypotheses, yeah? And also to correlate the revenue and the expenses. Make sure that the revenue and the expenses have a correlation between them, yeah? I'm going to have this revenue, but that's also going to mean this specific expense. And to create different scenarios, yeah? We always recommend at least 2 or 3 scenarios that you have to work with that can give you different views of what can happen in your business in the future, yeah? Okay, is this sort of clear? Yeah? Okay, sorry. You both.
No, I was thinking also that in line with reducing uncertainty, if you remember in the first session when we were discussing customer segments, we talked about putting ourselves in the shoes of our customers and understand their pains and their potential willingness to consume. So this is where you start working on techniques to reduce uncertainty. Are city councils indeed interested in paying for this type of service, and how many of them? So this is where we start building the hypothesis of our feasibility plan, no? How many potential contracts will I be able to sign over the first years? So yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Think of the links of the different tools
No, that's
we
great.
discussed during the session.
Yes. Okay, so let's imagine some scenarios, yeah? We have happy face, unhappy face, and one in the middle there, yeah? Green, yellow, or red. So key questions that we should ask ourselves. And we have divided here into blocks by service line or by the chances of sales, yeah? This is going to give us different ideas or different things that we need to think about. So by service line, a key question would be, what is the minimum income that I have to maintain? The minimum income to maintain the structure to survive, yeah? Or to survive the business, yeah? So we have here 3 different phases, yeah? The unhappy phase, red one, is what is the minimum I must maintain to survive and keep generating impact? That's meaning number of people or activities that I'm taking, but it's not the ideal case. Or which projects am I interested in saving in the second instance? Yeah. Sorry if the yellow is not very clear there. Criteria, economic viability, level of social impact, number of payrolls it allows me to pay. Here I would be able to maintain, but it wouldn't be the best. But then, in addition to the previous one, which projects would I really like to try to maintain? Yeah, that would be the best scenario that I would like to maintain to maintain my business. And then on the other side, we have chances of sales. Which projects or products or services have I sold, and which am I likely to sell? Yeah, this is the key question that we have to ask ourselves. Yeah, so which ones do I already have guaranteed sales for? Then which ones do I already have guaranteed sales for, and do I have high probability of converting into sales? Yeah, that would be the middle one. And then which new ones can I manage to materialize? Yeah, so maximize the result of my business. Yeah, and we have to be as realistic as possible. Yeah, so these are key questions that you need to ask yourselves to draw different hypotheses and to see what would be the result of your business in different scenarios. Okay, so let's talk about some of the problems that we might find, yeah, in viability studies. We obviously are going to find problems, but if there's a problem, there should be a solution. So that's the good news. So what type of problems might we have, and what would we do to tackle them? Okay. So in a specific, also we need to think, is the problem in a specific business line project? Is it allocated to a specific line of my project, or is it general to my entire organization? Do I have a negative gross margin? That was a margin after when you deducted the incomes minus the cost, yeah? Or do I have a negative EBITDA, or do I have a negative EBT? Sorry, that's the revenue before taxes. So if depending on these type of problems, yeah, there's specific actions that you can take, yeah. For example, we can try to boost our sales, yeah. And if we boost our sales and projects, it's a way to quickly generate money, yeah. Then we can innovate income sources. For example, we can like change the type of clients or funders that we might have, and see how the income would be different to what I already have in my business. We can boost sales projects of existing clients or funders. We have already some clients that are buying me this, but can I boost those sales to other funders, yeah. And we can also increase sale prices, yeah. That would be like also a solution that we could like implement. And on the other hand, what we could also do is try to reduce our expenses. If we do, for example, cost reduction of non-personnel, because obviously we would like to try to keep the salaries of the people working for us. So we can see if we can do a contingency procurement plan to obtain my products that I need to produce my product, no, cheaper or less quality. That would also be something we could do. Or to see what of my structural costs I can do also a contingency for. For example, here we put a little example of COVID-19 when everything was in lockdown and all the structures were locked down, and therefore all the costs of production were reduced, yeah? Then we can do the low cost production, so to be more efficient, yeah? And therefore we're also reducing our expenses. And in the least likely scenario, we would also have to do personnel reduction, yeah? So we would need to let people go, or we would need to let, if we have a big office that we're not using, maybe we would have to get a smaller office, different types of reductions that we can do, yeah? So the income statement is basically a very important tool that's going to help us detect very easily, yeah, where we have a problem and what type of solution we can put into place. And that's basically why it's an essential tool for feasibility analysis, because very quickly we can see if our incomes are lower than our expenses. Therefore, it's not going to be feasible. So therefore, we need to see how I can generate more income and how I can lower my expenses. Yeah, I hope that was clear. Does anybody have any questions on this? Am I going too fast? No. Okay, cool. Paul, would you like to?
Cool. Yeah, we're moving to the next tools now. Basically, what we are doing is we are showing you the different tools that you need to analyze the viability of your projects, and then we will try to build a very simple profit and loss with you all. Okay, these type of actions are the same type of hypotheses that we will encourage you to discuss with us. Basically, as Blanca was saying, if we find ourselves in a negative result in the profit and loss, well, do I need to create a new customer segment in the business model, or do I need to see if I can charge more to the same customer segment, or do I need a different value proposition in order to widen the scope of potential customers, or do I need to optimize my activities, or do I need to change my providers? No, these are all these type of actions link to different fields of our business model. Okay, the business model that we discussed last day are the kind of assumptions that we will ask you to do, and they are also to some extent the same type of questions that we were asking you when discussing the break-even point, no? The contribution margin. What's the relationship between price and variable costs? What's the amount of fixed costs that we have, and how does this affect the viability, the feasibility of my project? Yeah. So basically, we have understood, or we have looked now at where our viability comes from, okay, in order to focus a little bit the management effort, no? Does our viability depend on large sales, or does it depend in large margins, or in efficiency in logistics, and where do we need to focus? But there are also, as we discussed, two other areas that we need to consider when discussing the feasibility of our project. Okay, while the The profit and loss account told us if we were winning or losing money through the activity, if we were sustainable. The new tools, the balance sheet and the cash flow that we will discuss now very briefly, will tell us if we are solvent and if we are liquid. So if we are strong enough to survive and if we have cash to keep it moving, to keep the activity running. So we move from looking at just revenue to look at the actual state of the bank accounts, okay, and the overall wealth as a company. We like to see the balance sheet, as I said in the beginning, I think, as the muscle of the company. It tells us what the business is made of, okay, the strength, the structure, the long-term health, because it tells us if we have assets and how we paid for it, if we have debts or we have our own capital. While the cash flow, it's a little bit like the blood of the company, because it's the cash that keeps our company running, okay? So we will give a brief introduction, because that would, if we made it longer, it would be like a very long financial discussion. But basically, as we're saying, the balance sheet is the photograph of the company's equity at a given moment, okay, usually at the end of the year, and it represents the financial health of the organization, okay? The balance is divided into two balanced sides, which is the assets, what we have, and it includes everything from the cash in the bank account, the money that customers owe us, the machinery, the vehicles, the land, and it also includes the liability, the liability, the debts that we have with banks, the obligations, no? Generally, that's how the balance sheet looks like. Assets, as we said in the beginning, are the resources controlled by the company, resulting from previous events, from which we expect to obtain future economic benefits, no? A tractor is an asset because it helps us harvest crops. The office is an asset because it's where we work. Our software licenses are assets because with those we produce some documents that allow us to generate revenues, okay? And assets could be non-current assets. So usually something, what we say is something that is not very liquid, something that I cannot sell tomorrow and make money out of it. And current assets, which are like debts from our customers that will be paid close or directly cash, no? Something that is very liquid. Yes, it says here, it's ordered from top to bottom, according to liquidity, no? Capacity to be converted in cash. That's how we present a balance sheet, okay? And liabilities are the obligations, the weights that we carry, no? A healthy business needs to, let's say, use the assets to generate enough value to cover for the liabilities, okay? And if our liabilities are growing faster than our assets, our muscle is wasting away, okay? We are becoming more and more fragile. That's the structure of the financial muscle, economic muscle of our company. But the cash flow is, as we said, the blood of this organization, okay? And that's the kind of tool that is used to observe it. This tool is purely about the timing of money, okay? It tracks the inflows, the money coming in, the earnings, and outflows. So the money going out over a specific period and usually month by month. So basically, it contains all the money that the company possesses in liquid and in which moment it goes in and it goes out, and it gives us the overall picture of the treasury balance, okay? The liquid available in the company derived from the difference of what we earn and what we pay at each period in time. See, this one, it's not about the aggregate income projected at the end of the year, but exactly what do we expect every month. And why would it be different from the income statement? Well, because as we said, we can have a projected income over the year, like a subsidy, that will only happen at the end of the year. But we need to pay providers at the first month of the year. Okay, so it's basically important to understand, because it gives us a different information. The income statement, as Blanca was saying, will help us see whether we need to increase sales, whether we need to decrease some costs. It will tell us whether we need to optimize a little bit some processes of our company. But the cash flow will tell us the specific information about whether we can pay the bills today. Yeah. What do we see in the cash flow? Basically, you can break it down as well to understand where do we have our liquidity problem. No, for instance, we could have earnings from ordinary activities. So we have, let's say, from the workshops that we're doing, we get paid by clients, and payments for this type of ordinary activities. Okay, if we saw problems here, it means that there is some adjustment that needs to be made in the earning and payment periods. But problems could come or solutions could come from other places. No, for instance, from a very typical problem is debt. We have positive result from our operational cash flow, let's say, from the earnings and payments from ordinary activities, but we are bleeding from other payments because we are returning long-term or short-term credits to the bank, okay, which would be the financial cash flow. Okay, so there it allows us to see exactly where do we have the liquidity problem and start identifying potential solutions. If we have positive operational cash flow, but we are bleeding from financial cash flow, maybe we need changes in the sort of agreements that we have with banks. But if we have negative operational cash flow, either we make agreements with banks to cover temporarily this negative cash flow in the beginning of the year, or we make different agreements with providers. Yes? So it is clear the distinction between income statement and cash flow. Because now our idea, before the pause, we didn't put the slide for the pause, I think. Yeah. Our idea is to build a feasibility plan. Okay? The idea is to discuss the hypothesis of a business model and viability plan, observe how the viability of our project changes if we change some assumptions, and share thoughts about the business model. Okay, we will fill in a template collaboratively, but we would like to take a 10 minutes or 15 minutes pause as every week, and then we come back to the example. Are there doubts, questions, ideas, comments that you would like?
¿Hay dudas? Preguntas.
Before the pause?
Ideas.
Okay. I see no questions. So we will take a, do we usually do 15 minutes pause or 10, 15 minutes, I think?
Yeah, 15 minutes, yeah.
Yeah, cool. Then we'll have a 15 minutes pause and we'll be back at 5:40. Yep.
De 15 minutos y volveremos. A las 5:40 de la madrugada. Sí.
We can
As we were saying, we want now to do a little bit of an activity, okay, like every day, which is discussing with you the hypothesis of the business model and the viability plan of the business model we designed the previous week, okay? And start discussing how viability changes if we change some assumptions. If you remember last week, let me share a different screen. Yeah. So if you remember last week when we discussed the business model, we produced this all together. Yep. And we start discussing, okay, what would be the customer segment of our business model? And we said, yeah, we want to target urban professionals suffering from stress or burnout. We want to target nature lovers. We want to target local people living in a biosphere reserve. We want to see what people interested in nature healing and mindfulness and senior people specifically seeking relaxation would be interested in. And we want to offer it as a tourist pack for consumers and families who want to enjoy some group experiences. Okay, these are the customer segments we defined last week, and we said we would offer personalized wellness retreats. We would offer mental health group therapies. We said we would offer, activities in direct contact with nature and less formal ways of conducting mental health therapy in activities related to nature walks. I don't know if you can see it here, but these are the post-its we all wrote the previous week, which are nature walks and meditation and yoga sessions. We said forest bathing, forest therapy, creativity sessions, educational activities as well. We said art therapy. We also said we would offer capacity building activities and like other observational and nature-related activities such as cleaning the forest, etc., etc. But the main activity we said would be conducting therapy sessions. Okay, so I hope you more or less remember this business model that we designed, because now we would like to start building with you the revenue and cost structure of this business model. Why? Because then we will plug it into an Excel file that we already have prepared for you to start evaluating the feasibility of this activity. Okay, sorry. Okay, so hopefully you all remember this business model, and now I would like to start hearing from you some potential revenue streams that you think could come from this business model. I don't know who wants to start. We can do it by activity. Okay, we have one activity that is generic, no? Therapy sessions. But we could also couple it with the customer segments. Therapy sessions for professionals seeking, professionals with burnout would be one type of service. Group sessions with senior people interested in relaxation and nature baths would be another revenue stream. So yeah, that's the first question. I'd like to hear some answers. What are the revenues from the business model? What services, lines of services are we offering? And also think about the potential packages that you might be interested in offering, etc., etc. Okay. We'll give you, let's say, 4 minutes to discuss in groups or to write messages in the chat, and we will work on this collaboratively. Okay. Let's go. 4 minutes. Okay, we have private or specialized sessions. Good. That's one revenue stream. I'll drop some corporate retreats. Okay, very interesting. We have one revenue stream, which is private or specialized sessions. We have another one, which is corporate retreats and weekend packages. Good. We have, I'll say it myself, therapy set. The incomes come from the workshops. We can offer individual workshops or packages with different workshops. Okay, so we have a package thing. Fees from participants, yes, but I would like a little bit more of nuance on the type of activity, because this is, and especially I think it's useful if you think in the customer segment, because then when we need to create the hypothesis for how many can we sell, we need to understand who are we going to chase, or who are we going to talk to. For instance, one example, therapy sessions for senior people seeking relaxation. That's one a little bit more specific revenue stream under the idea of fees from participants, but it helps us think, okay, if I want to be able to commercialize to this specific customer segment, I will need to offer this to associations, for instance, like neighbor associations where senior people are, or I need to offer it maybe even to hospitals, or not hospitals, but like care homes, no? So that they help me create the customer base. Nature walk with gastronomic tasting. Yes, Maria, exactly. That's another revenue stream. I have another one, which is, yes, great forest walks for school pupils. Exactly. That's Anka. Thank you very much. That's another example of a specific revenue stream that will help us build hypotheses. Another one, family activities, no? You know, we target families. That's a different target. Okay, where do we need to offer these activities, and how many do we think can we sell? Yeah. And I think maybe the nature walk with gastronomic tasting, it's also, yeah, I think that's let's say specific enough. Good. What else? Should we say something about people who are already, meditation session for corporate customers? Good. Maybe I would say something about people who are already undertaking, we're already in therapy, but want to test a different, okay, another sort of customer segment and revenue stream. Yeah, good. No one said anything, for instance, about subsidies. But maybe that's something we will need to talk about at a later point. And no one said anything about revenue streams coming from, let's say, professionals who conduct therapy that want to offer a value added to their customers, but maybe that's not an option at this point. Training courses for forest bathing guides, exactly. That's kind of the point that I was saying, that we are not only selling to end consumers. Sometimes we're selling to people who also offer a service and just want to give a value added to the service. Thank you, Rafael. Great. Okay, so we have these 8 business lines. We'll leave it here because that's enough for the Excel file that we will build later. Cost structure, company packages, team building activities. Thank you, Nadia. Yes, great. Cost structure. Okay, so now the reverse side. Let's say, what costs do we expect for these activities? We'll give you 4 minutes as well to discuss in groups for those that are a group of people, and the rest of you, please feel free to write it in the chat or to say it out loud. Yep, Nadia, salaries or fees for guides and therapists. That's a very good point, and there's something interesting to discuss in these points, which is that one thing is a fixed cost, the salaries, because if we have people hired all over the year, that's a fixed cost, and the other one is a variable one. It's a variable cost, because the fees for guides or therapists will only be paid if we need to, if we need them, no? We will pay them as we need them. Great. Venue rental, thank you, Tatiana. That's also a variable cost. Veronica says transport. I'm gonna ask Veronica, transport of what or of who? Is this transport of clients inside the reserve?
We are talking with our expert in forest bathing guide. He's thinking about transport of himself, not from the people. Because,
Transporte de clientes dentro de la reserva con nuestro gasto en bosque.
because
Forestales, guía de base en Force. Para hacer cumplir la base. ¿Está pensando en el transporte de sí mismo?
sorry, we have the translation closed because he needs to move from the one place to another, and it's a long way. So this is also important to consider. Also,
Good. So transport of the people working in the workers, basically. Okay, what else do we have here? Equipment and material for each of the workshops, let's say. Marketing and comms, which is also a fixed cost of the activity. What else can we think of? Maybe maybe some marketing with paid social media, yes. Mats, blankets, walking sticks, signals, markers, yes. Accommodation, okay. Maybe some basic banking services, no? Maybe some basic professional services like an accountant in order to pay taxes properly every year. Booking platform subscription fees, yes, very interesting. So the digital infrastructure costs, yeah, cool. Food and drinks will be included in the price of the activity. We don't know if we have to consider a cost structure. I think that's very interesting. That, yeah, definitely included, like food and drinks for each session. That's a very interesting variable cost. Good, that's more or less enough at this point, okay? So basically now, what we are going to do is in the same Excel file that we're going to share this with you at the end of the session today. Sorry. Do you see the Excel file? Yeah. So in the same Excel file in which you will have this basic structure to calculate the break-even point, we will also have three files in which we will see revenue forecast, costs, and the profit and loss account. Okay, this is basically what we've been discussing about. And the idea is that we will move this business model into our Excel file to see how feasible it is, okay? How are we going to do this? We will start by revenue streams, okay? So now we're going to try and move these post-its into the Excel file. Sorry, let me. I've lost it. Here. Yeah. So for revenue streams, we've said therapy sessions for senior people, seeking relaxation. That will be Blanca will give me a hand with this. Can we see it bigger? Yes, of course. And in the comments or hypothesis section, is it better now, Veronica? Yeah, I think so. So we've said therapy sessions for senior people seeking relaxation and forest walks for school people, for school pupils. I think what is interesting to do now is to think about the type of service that we are selling and the chances of being able to commercialize it. For instance, therapy sessions for senior people, I think they are easy to design, or let's say, yeah, easy to design. Why? Because it's a similar structure that we repeat with different groups. and let's say medium hard to commercialize. Okay, why? Well, because it's not so easy to be able to sell this type of service to a group of old people or to an association or whatever, no? Whereas forest walks for school pupils are medium, let's say medium design cost, and medium or easy, let's say, to commercialize. Why? Well, because schools will ask us to tailor a little bit the type of activity to the educational content or the curriculum that they are learning at that point of the year. So we'll need to adapt it every time. But it's a little bit easy to commercialize because it's easier to go to one school, two schools, three schools, and try to make them join the activities. Yeah, that's a little bit, that's let's say, usually you have to fine tune a little bit these assumptions, right? But that's the type of thought, the type of thought that you need to put behind each revenue stream. Okay, same for family activities. No, it's easy to design because it's a standard package, and easy to commercialize because nowadays there's a lot of rural tourism, and it's easier to just putting some banners and some online ads and getting at least a small amount of families joining the activities. Let's not put more revenue streams, Blanca, because otherwise the model of the Excel file will, well, basically we would need to change every line. So we will do the thing with this, with the few lines that we have now, okay, which is school pupils, senior people, family activities, and corporate retreats, which I think it's a good sample of the type of activities that we are doing. And for corporate retreats, we could say that it's hard to design, okay, because certain companies will want us to adapt the type of discussions to the type of conflicts that they have in their management board, or that they have within their technicians, or that they have in specific departments. So it's expensive to design, and it's also hard to commercialize because it's not easy to make businesses spend money in mental health for their workers, okay, or in, let's say, mental health oriented team building activities. Yeah, so that's the type of thought I would like you to put into these 4 revenue streams. Do you think these guesses are more or less all right? Would you like to, actually, we can share this Excel file with you because we'll share it anyway. So you can access it directly. Yeah, there you go. So what do you think about this hypothesis, and what do you think would be the type of price that each customer segment would be willing to pay for this type of service? Are we thinking about 100 euros or 1,500 euros for companies? What's the willingness to pay that, if we did a proper, let's say, customer segment analysis, these groups would be able to pay? Let's think about it for 4 minutes again, and give me thoughts, ideas about the hypothesis, about the prices. I see a few of you have entered the document. Hopefully you are discussing in groups.
Yeah, we are talking all together, so we are.
I was just filling in the blank. Don't worry, Veronica. Typical question in order to fit your discussions that we need to ask ourselves. For schools, for instance, do we have contacts with schools in our region that ensure us a certain number of services that will be sold? Yeah, no, because my friend is the director of one public school and they told me they can buy for 4 different courses. Okay, that's 1 point. Carmen says, for all people, 135 euros, 10 sessions. Okay, we will, yes, we will put 135 and just assume that the therapy session for senior people is a part of 10. Yeah. I think that's a lot, by the way. So, I mean, but very, very low, to be fair. Individual sessions, 20 euros. Okay, I think we're, let me see one thing. Yeah, we can fit that. Individual sessions, 20 euros. Easy to design and easy to commercialize. What else? For schools, anyone would be willing to put a price? If not, I will put it for you. Look, 6 euros per kid times a class of 15, let's say. Maybe 6 euros, it's too low. 10, 15 euros, and half is subsidized by the school and half the kid. 225 euros per forest walk per class. Anka says, maybe we should detail a little the type of service. If you have a therapist, might be more expensive. Okay, to be fair, I was assuming that you would say that you had a therapist, no, that everywhere that would be a therapist, but maybe we want to make different service lines. Forest bathings, groups to 20 to 30 euros. Okay, let's narrow down the discussion a little bit. In order to simplify the discussion now here, we will have 5 revenue streams. Okay, let's discuss only these ones, which are therapy sessions for senior people, forest walks for school pupils, family activities, which could be the forest bathing and nature walks, yeah, corporate retreats, and individual sessions. Okay, so forest bathings. Rafael said 20 euros. Rafael, I'm assuming you say 20 euros per person and a group of at least 10. So if there's not 10 people, we don't do the session. It doesn't need to be all friends, but you know, we group them and we make a session for them. Yeah, perfect. So let's say 200 euros per forest bathing or nature walk activities. For the corporate retreat, unless anyone tells me otherwise, I'm gonna go very high, and I'm gonna say 1,200 or even more. Yeah, 1,500. And individual sessions, to be honest, 20 euros. I don't know who said it, but it's very low. And I agree. Yeah, I agree with Blanca, and also I agree with Rafael. And I would go more like to 90 euros. Yeah. We can see at a later stage if there are offers and additional packages. But that would be our first, price menu, let's say. Yeah. Based on this and on the hypothesis about how easy it is to commercialize, I would like you to start thinking about the number of sales we could expect in the first year. Yeah. So starting for therapy sessions for senior people. How are we going to reach out to these people? And how many of them do we expect to convince? Yeah. So these are the two questions I would like you to ask yourself about each revenue stream and give me a potential answer. And we will work it out and stress this hypothesis. Good. Tatiana says advertisement in a local newspaper and on the radio. Okay. Here, I will give you one direct mail. Okay. One insight on making this type of hypothesis. Okay. If we don't have direct contact, Carmen says workshops in the schools of the Biosphere Reserve, because Javier, the entrepreneur, knows many people in the education sector from his previous jobs. He already has a network. Yes, exactly. So if we don't have direct contact with the customer segment, that's where we must be more conservative in the hypothesis, the sales hypothesis for the first year. Yes? So this means that, let's do this to the first two together. If for schools we have contact or we know many people in the education sector, maybe we can say, look, I have contact with 10 schools. and I expect them to buy, let's say, I'm going to say 15 or 16 sessions, no? 8 courses, 2 classes, all of them will hire every time. So we expect 160, that's a lot, but 160 services only from school forest walks in the first year. Yeah. Whereas for therapy sessions for senior people seeking relaxation, since we do not have direct contact with them and we only expect them to show up by seeing an advertisement in a local newspaper and on the radio, well, maybe we do not expect that many activities such as this one during the first year. Let's say twice a month. Yeah. So it would be 24. Yeah, does it make sense how we are building the activities? And for families, well, probably it's an in-between, no? Because through the schools, we might be able to convince, the kids will go home and tell mom, oh, it was really cool. And then parents will say, yeah, okay, maybe we can do one with your little brother as well. But we don't have direct contact with them. So it could be, yeah, that's how you start building hypothesis. So we could say 60 over the first year. Yeah. And corporate retreats, well, even less, no? Because as we said, companies do not want to spend money, or it's hard for them to spend money. So it's often something that it's hard to commercialize. And I would say once a month for the first year at least. Yeah. So we could say 12. And individual sessions, again, 60, because it's the in-between, same as for families. Yeah. That we are doing this the speed up pace because we are a lot of people here, but the core idea is that with the customer segments that we defined in the first session and the business model that we defined in the second session, we are able to map potential consumers and their willingness to pay and the chances that they show up as consumers as we start commercializing our activities. Yeah. So that would be the expected sales. We will see how this ends up after once we see the results. And that this would be the potential revenue from these activities. Okay, this is automatic with the prices that we defined in the beginning and the number of sales that we assumed for the first year. We obtain the total revenue from sales for the first year. Yeah. It is low, it is high, it is what we expected, is it not? Well, it depends on the costs that we think we will face. Yeah. So we will stress this hypothesis later, but now let's go into the costs. Yeah. What did we say when we were working on the business model about the costs? We said that we had some fixed costs that were salaries, some fixed costs that were marketing, booking platform subscription fees, and insurance. Yeah, so let's make, sorry, these are variable costs. So we said venue rental, salaries, marketing, booking platform subscription, and insurance. Yeah. And let's delete all the others because we won't need them at this point. Yeah. And we have some variable costs that depend on the number of sessions that we deliver. Usually, maybe also accreditation cost if we do therapy or school programs. Okay. Yeah, accreditation costs. Usually, we would define variable costs different for each service line, let's say. In this case, for simplicity, we will assume that the variable costs are more or less the same, or are exactly the same for each type of service, okay? So what are the variable costs? We have the cost of the guide or therapist, yeah. We have the transport of guides. We have the materials for each session. And we have food and drinks for each session, yeah? First walk for schools years, 160. Yes, Carmen, that's what we assumed just for as an assumption, but we can stress it later, the assumptions. Catering as variable. Yes, Veronica, perfect. Okay. So now let's think about the amounts. Again, let's think for 4 minutes. Think for 4 minutes about the amount of each variable cost. Well, let's think about variable and also fixed cost. Personal costs, 80 euros. 80 euros per month. That's very low. Tell me, Veronica.
Now, due to the normative here in Spain, is what he is paying now, 80 euros a month during the 2 first years. So,
Y ahora, por lo normativo aquí en España.
Okay. So you mean yeah, paying the tax for being self-employed. Yes, indeed. Yeah, but that's fixed. It's a fixed cost. Let's call it administration, like self-employed tax and others. And let's put 100. Tatiana says, guide or therapist 30, transport 5. Okay, transport 5, materials 10, 30 on event. Event, I'm going to assume it's catering 30. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's an interesting question. Tatiana says, guide or therapist 30, but Nadia said, guide or therapist 100 euros per session. Yeah. Yeah. So we have one conflict here, or small conflict, let's say. For individual sessions, if we are charging 60 euros to the final consumer, we cannot, or it would be weird to pay 80 or 100, as Nadia said, per session. But maybe that's what we want to do, and we expect to cover this with other services. And we are doing the individual sessions specifically to reach to a customer segment that we are very interested, because it's where more impact is made, and it's part of the core values of the project. That's something we can discuss. Okay, transport, we will make it more. We'll put 80 euros transport. Okay, Carmen says, we don't have to pay for a guide or therapist because the entrepreneur is both the guide and the therapist. He's everything. Okay. Okay, so we will do something, because I think people have different things in mind for this activity. Some people have in mind this entrepreneur who is a guide and therapist and doesn't need to let's say, hire anyone to complement the activity. Some people are thinking that this is a business project in which we organize the activities, but sometimes we need a dedicated guide or therapist for the activity. So we will do something which is assuming it's a specific guide, but it's a cheap one to account for, let's say, variability. That in some cases we will need it, and in some cases we won't need it. Okay, so it's a small fee, assuming we will only need then half of the time. That's a cheating way of doing this, but let's do it this way, okay? And let's say the guide. Yeah. Okay. Then for fixed costs, what do we have in mind? Let's be a little bit fast in here. What do you think? Accreditation costs to operate with schools and everything. I'm not familiar with the sector, so help me with this. Accreditations, booking platform subscription, the venue rental. Let's think about it for Veronica says training capacitation, 3,000 euros. Okay, we'll have this as accreditation and training capacitation altogether. 3,000 euros, a fixed costs. Google says between 50 and 400 euros for forest schools. Okay, yeah. So we did this altogether, anchor of accreditation and training, 3,000 euros every year. Yeah. Come on, let's make some quick assumptions. Salaries. Let's say business, so labor costs. Yeah, 40,000 salaries. Marketing, booking platform subscription, that's cheap. Let's say 250. Insurances, let's say 75 or 100 euros times 12 months, 1,200. Maybe it would be more because it's a school. So it's for kids, it's a bit more expensive. Yeah. And marketing, we'll need to make a big expense the first year. So let's say 1,000 euros. Marketing is 290 each month. Okay. Good. Yeah, and venue rental, we will make an assumption 1,200 times for fixed cost. Then let's say 300 per month. Perfect. Great. Yeah. Okay. So that's our initial approach. And with this, we obtain the summary on costs. Okay. The total fixed costs would be 53,000, and the total variable costs based on the number of sales we set in the previous file would be 51,000 euros. Yep, that's the first approach. And we obtain, sorry, because, yeah, let's not see the second and third scenario yet. Okay, so we see that as we have it right now, this is not working. Yep, that's not sustainable. That's the first approach we need to do. And now what we can do is we start stretching or, let's say, stress testing the hypothesis and understanding what we need to do to make it profitable. Yeah. So as of now, we have, let's say that the gross margin, yeah, the concept that we discussed today is positive. The cost of sales is lower than the revenue from sales, but we have large fixed costs, large structural costs. So we have to start seeing what can we do to improve the final result of our activity. First thing, well, Carmen said, yeah, there is no rent because we are in a free co-working in the village. Okay, that's an initial approach. That's 3,600 euros gone. We still have 26,000 to go. Yeah, that's it. But that's the way you need to start testing the hypothesis of your model. What else could we say? Can we cut on some of the fixed or, venue rental, 0 euros. Free co-working in the village. Yep. Can we cut any other cost, or should we just improve our commercialization strategy and reach out to different customer segments? Can we reduce the salary of this person? Can we maybe spend less in transport of the guides? No, for maybe we can cut in half the transportation costs Training. If we hire occasional therapist guy, we don't need to pay so much on training. Okay. So we are back to the accreditation costs that Anka said, yeah, of 400, let's say, yeah. And we start reducing some of the losses. Well, maybe that's the information we needed to see, okay, maybe we need a subsidy. Maybe it's not possible in the first year to operate profitably on our own, and we need a subsidy. Can we obtain support from the city council because they are very interested in having economic activity in their village? Or can we obtain a subsidy from a regional or national government because they want to support business activity in the area? Well, maybe that's the information we need to ask for a subsidy, yeah? And we would need to map it out and identify where does it come from exactly. But maybe it could be 20,000 euro subsidy, and then we sort of start working profitably, yeah? Anka said, maybe also reduce salaries, we start with a smaller team, yeah. That's the type of questions that you need to ask yourselves. I'm trying to wrap it up already. Yeah? Hire more people full-time as the business grows. Yes, indeed. Once we've, let's say, designed our baseline scenario, it's interesting to start thinking of alternative scenarios that we could face in the first year. Yeah. For instance, what would happen? Let's go to the bad scenario. If we don't manage to get the accreditation to work for schools, well, it means that this one would go to zero, no? And the other ones would stay as they are. And we would see a significant reduction in our, why is this not working properly? Yeah. So what would happen if we don't get the accreditation to operate with schools and our sales with schools goes down to zero? Well, it means that we would see a significant reduction in the total revenue of our organizations. But what if on the other side, the schools, we do get the accreditation, and from schools, we manage to also sell a good bunch of family activities, no? Because we have a very good targeted strategy to, obtain visits from families, and this goes up to 120. Well, maybe in that case, we wouldn't need the subsidy, no? That's the type of discussions that you need to have with yourself, with your colleagues in the organization, to stress test the viability of the project. Yeah. Again, these are not magic numbers. This is not about making stuff up to see how much money we can make. This is about understanding the conditions under which our idea is feasible. And what we see is that in the baseline scenario, sorry, the expenses, Wait a sec. So in the baseline scenario, what we see is that we are profitable if we manage to receive a subsidy of 20,000 euros. But in the scenario in which we do not receive the accreditation to work with schools, we are not profitable even with this subsidy. Yeah. So we start to see the conditions that we need to make sure that happen before we start operating. Yeah. And that's what is interesting, to draw the specific hypothesis of each scenario and make sure that we are able to accomplish them. Is it reasonable? Ask yourself, is it reasonable that I reach out to 60 families over the first year and convince them for a forest bathing and nature walks? Well, I don't have contacts with them. I'm not very good at marketing. Well, maybe I need to reduce this, no? Or think it otherwise. If the only condition to achieve sustainability is to reach out to these 60 families, then make sure you have a strategy to contact them. Yeah. That's the type of conclusions we get from doing this exercise. Again, please feel free to ask questions and whatever, but the idea is that you are able to work on your own, on your project or on the project you want to analyze, and test this hypothesis. For instance, if you go to a bank, I'm putting an example, or even to a city council, and you want to ask for a loan, they will ask you, okay, if this is your viability plan and that's your expected profit and loss, how do you expect to reach out to these 24 groups of senior people and convince them to hire your services? How do you expect to reach out to these 160 groups of school pupils to come to the Biosphere Reserve for a forest walk? Yeah. So make sure that you challenge the hypothesis. Make sure that you are not making numbers up to see a big number in the profit and loss. Try to understand why you are assuming these numbers and evaluate if on reasonable assumptions, on conservative assumptions, the project is feasible. Yeah. Questions, comments, complaints, ideas? All good? Our colleague is very happy of having such amount of information. Yeah, this Excel is very interesting. Good. Then thanks a lot for your participation. Again, keep in mind that this is a tool for you to analyze the business model. It's not a fixed photo. It's something that needs to help you make decisions. What decision do we get from this Excel file? Well, that we need a strong campaign with schools and we need a strong campaign with senior people. Yeah. So keep these things in mind. Feel free to ask questions, to send us an email. And also remember that at the end of the seminar, we have some time for discussion individually. for you to take additional notes or ask for help on how you should use this tool to make decisions.